the first helicopter descends into the clearing under low cloud. Before the skids are fully down, heavy machine gun fire erupts from the tree line to the west. A second position opens fire from the south. The landing zone is under intersecting fire before the assault force is fully on the ground. Door gunners return fire immediately. Pilots hold position only long enough for the first men to jump. A gunship on the right flank takes repeated hits along its fuselage and crashes into the grass beyond the landing zone. Mortar rounds begin landing from beyond the trees. The first impacts fall long. The next land closer. The pattern tightens toward the clearing. Radio traffic spikes. One transmission cuts through. Air, immediate. F-100 jets are already inbound. This is supposed to be a prison camp raid, the first test of a newly formed rescue system. The resistance suggests they have landed inside a major enemy position, not a small guard force protecting a camp. The F-100s begin their attack run under low cloud cover. Bombs impact near the tree line, but close enough to affect friendly positions. Helicopters attempt to reposition, as debris from the strikes reduces visibility across the landing zone. Several men take cover in the nearest craters in the ground as the bombing run concludes. By nightfall, surviving elements will still be holding this clearing. The POW they came to rescue will not be there. This is the story of the first major recovery attempt by a new covert unit in Vietnam, and how the decisions surrounding it turned a rescue into a disaster. If high-risk operations like this interest you, particularly when they escalate into fights for survival against larger enemy forces, subscribe now. 6 weeks before the helicopters land, a defection sets the mission in motion. On August 30th, 1966, a 17-year-old Viet Cong defector named Teo reports seeing a Black American POW in a Mekong Delta camp 5 days earlier. The report is specific enough to act on and recent enough to matter. In the following weeks, it moves through intelligence channels to a newly established rescue element in Vietnam. For the first time, that unit has a live lead. Inside the Military Assistance Command Vietnam, MACV, a covert special operations element known as the Studies and Observation Group, or MACV-SOG, has recently established a Joint Personnel Recovery Center. The JPRC evaluates prisoner intelligence, plans deliberate recovery operations, and coordinates complex rescues beyond conventional search and rescue procedures. This will be its first major test, and the planned operation is assigned the code name Crimson Tide. The defector Teo describes one POW, but intelligence believes 3 are being held somewhere in the Delta. Analysts must determine which one he may have seen, as the POW's identity affects priority, the likely holding unit, and the scale of force required. The lead rests on a single human source, and if Teo is accurate, a POW may still be in place. If he is mistaken, or if the camp is relocated, the mission will launch against an empty objective. The decision to proceed sets off a process that stretches across weeks. From the beginning, the intelligence picture is unstable. Teo describes the camp from memory, and an Air Force reconnaissance aircraft is tasked to photograph the area. But the images fail to pinpoint the location. The aircraft has photographed the wrong zone, and Teo struggles to interpret high-altitude overhead imagery. The cycle then repeats: re-interrogation, revised coordinates, additional flights, with each correction consuming time and narrowing confidence in what remains on the ground. Oversight of the mission falls to Colonel Robert Adderholt, the Air Force officer directing the JPRC. He is responsible for turning Teo's report into an executable operation. As the target is refined, the plan enters the approval system. Because this will be the first deliberate assault planned by the new rescue element, JPRC, it draws scrutiny across multiple MACV staff sections. Operations requests contingencies. Intelligence demands further validation. Air planners assess support requirements and weather windows. At one stage, Adderholt attempts to brief Major General Joseph McChristian, the senior intelligence officer in Vietnam, but McChristian declines the meeting. The mission proposal is submitted for review and returned with additional questions. Further clarifications are required before it can move forward. More offices review the plan. More revisions are requested. As circulation widens, knowledge of the operation spreads beyond the small group that initially handled it. By the time authorization is finally granted, the original sighting of the POW is nearly 6 weeks old. The decision to launch is no longer based on fresh intelligence, but on institutional commitment. Later, the man who will lead the ground force, Captain Frank Jacks, summarizes it bluntly. It seemed that everybody and his brother knew about the mission. However, the mission proceeds anyway. On the afternoon of October 11, 1966, the delay ends. The helicopters lift off and head south toward the Mekong Delta as the weather begins to deteriorate. Monsoon clouds sit low, creating heavy overcast, and a sudden rainstorm reduces visibility and complicates navigation. Jacks flies in the lead helicopter, while the other aircraft struggle to maintain formation around him. 12 helicopters are committed to the insertion. Several of the aircraft are flown by South Vietnamese Army crews who are supporting the operation. On the ground will be a SOG Hatchet Force, a quick reaction assault element used for short, violent raids. Under Captain Jack's command, the Hatchet Force is organized into 3 platoons. The first platoon consists largely of Nung fighters, led by Green Beret advisors. The Nungs are ethnic Chinese soldiers, recruited in South Vietnam and employed by U.S. Special Forces for deniable and high-risk operations. The second and third platoons are mixed elements of Nungs and American Special Forces personnel. 2 platoons are designated as blocking elements to contain enemy movement, while the third is assigned to move toward the suspected prison camp and to recover the American POW. The structure assumes speed, surprise, and limited resistance. Before takeoff, Jacks makes a deliberate adjustment. He orders the men to leave standard rations behind and carry additional ammunition instead. The choice reflects his expectation of a brief, violent engagement rather than a prolonged operation. If extraction is delayed, they will have ammunition, but nothing else. Teo is placed aboard one of the helicopters. Jacks had not initially planned for him to accompany the assault, but he accepts the decision. If Teo is willing to return to the area he identified, it suggests confidence in the location. Whether that confidence is justified will not be clear until the landing. Air support planning introduces another constraint. Colonel Adderholt requests A-1 Sky Raiders, slower aircraft better suited to close air support under low cloud ceilings, but the request is denied by the 7th Air Force. Instead, F-100 jets are assigned to provide cover. Jets deliver greater speed and firepower, but they operate with less time over target. In poor visibility, speed reduces the time available to distinguish friendly forces from enemy positions. Approaching from the south, Jack studies the tree line ahead. He sees no movement. Then heavy machine gun fire erupts from concealed positions. Tracer fire cuts toward one of the gunships. Rounds rip into its fuselage. The aircraft crashes into the clearing as additional fire opens from multiple directions. Some helicopters maneuver to avoid the impact zone, while others commit to landing under fire. When Jacks's helicopter touches down, he steps into an inch of standing water left by days of rain. Wet ground slows movement, and the standing water hides shallow depressions and canals, which were not visible in aerial reconnaissance photos. Jacks lands with the 2nd platoon. The 3rd platoon touches down nearby and begins forming a perimeter around the landing zone. However, 4 helicopters carrying the 1st platoon are pushed east in the storm and forced to land beyond a shallow canal directly between 2 concealed enemy forces. The canal becomes a tactical barrier. Jacks, with the 2nd and 3rd platoons, is separated from the 1st platoon on the far side, unable to reinforce them without crossing open ground under fire. Heavy machine gun fire from concealed enemy positions forces the accompanying Huey gunships to break off their attack runs as Jacks radios for support. Enemy mortar fire begins adjusting toward the 1st platoon. Jacks can hear the rounds landing across the canal. Sergeant First Class Frederick Lewis, attached to the 1st Platoon, is killed almost immediately after stepping off his helicopter. Moments later, Sergeant First Class Charles Vessels is also cut down. With Lewis and Vessels dead, the 1st Platoon, comprised entirely of Nung fighters, loses its 2 American leaders within minutes of landing. Command then falls to junior NCOs, who are already pinned down. Fire continues from multiple fixed positions, overlapping and sustained. Mortars adjust with discipline. The Hatchet Force has landed between 2 North Vietnamese battalions. They are facing potentially 800 to 1,200 enemy troops, holding prepared positions on both sides of the landing zone. Movement toward the suspected prison camp becomes impossible. Every able-bodied man is committed to holding ground and preventing the perimeter from collapsing. After more than an hour under sustained fire, at approximately 1600 hours, Jacks gathers available elements of the 2nd and 3rd platoons and leads an assault against the nearest enemy machine gun position, under covering fire from the remaining gunships. The position is overrun. 2 prisoners are captured and questioned. No prison camp is found. No American POWs are located. Teo identifies an underground hospital complex and defensive bunkers. It is clear they have landed inside a major enemy base area, not a small holding site. The canal still prevents link-up with the 1st Platoon, while radio reports received from them are fragmented and urgent. They remain pinned down between 2 battalion-sized forces with no clear route of withdrawal. Jacks contacts a forward air controller flying overhead in an O-1 observation aircraft. F-100s are already circling. Jacks requests immediate strikes against the enemy positions, pinning the 1st Platoon. The controller clears the jets in. 2 F-100s descend through low cloud and release. The explosions land close, inside the Nung perimeter. Radio traffic erupts immediately. The bombs have fallen short. Broken cloud cover and limited visibility reduce the pilot's ability to distinguish friendly positions from enemy lines. The forward air controller aborts any further runs. The entire strike is over in seconds. When visibility returns, the situation on the far side of the canal is worse than before. Jacks assesses what remains. He is outside artillery range. Air support has been pulled back. The 1st Platoon is still isolated. His radios cannot reach higher headquarters. Daylight is fading. The rescue attempt is over. The problem now is extraction, but extraction requires a secure landing zone. The clearing is divided by a canal, under fire, and now cratered by American bombs. Jacks consolidates what remains of his force and forms a defensive perimeter. The men take cover in the deepest available ground, some inside bomb craters created only minutes earlier. As daylight fades, radio contact with the 1st Platoon weakens. The night becomes its own phase of the fight. Jacks expects an attack. He maintains radio contact with orbiting flare ships overhead, aircraft that drop parachute flares to illuminate the clearing and complicate enemy movement. The flares descend in cycles, briefly lighting the perimeter before darkness returns. Between flare drops, the perimeter relies on sound and short bursts of fire to deter movement beyond the canal. The pilots keep talking to Jacks over the radio. They assure him they will remain overhead and that extraction will come at daylight. It is the only steady signal he receives. On the ground, conditions continue to deteriorate. By midnight, insects and leeches cover men who cannot shift position without drawing fire. They have no food. The decision to carry extra ammunition instead of rations now traps them in hunger while they remain wet and exhausted. Ammunition is checked quietly. No one knows how many engagements remain before dawn. Sporadic fire continues from beyond the canal, but no organized assault follows. Radio transmissions from the 1st Platoon grow shorter and less frequent. As casualties mount and batteries fail, their return fire begins to fade. The objective is no longer movement. It is survival until daylight and extraction at first light. If the 1st Platoon is lost, the mission will be remembered for its casualties, not its objective. At first light, gunships return to suppress enemy positions around the clearing. There is no large-scale enemy assault at dawn, but intermittent fire continues as extraction aircraft approach. Evacuation begins mid-morning. The landing zone remains divided by the canal, requiring staged lifts under security from the surviving elements of the 2nd and 3rd platoons. Of the 40 men that landed in with the 1st platoon, only 6 are found alive. The 2nd and 3rd platoons have also taken casualties, but retain enough strength to secure the landing zone during evacuation. Bodies are recovered and loaded onto departing helicopters alongside the wounded. The withdrawal is tense, but not met with a coordinated enemy counterattack. The force is flown to Viet Cong and then transferred onto a C-130 for the return flight to Kon Tum. Body bags containing the dead travel with the surviving troops. The mission ends without locating the suspected prison camp. None of the American POWs believed to be held in the Delta are located, and Teo's sighting is never conclusively tied to a specific captive. Instead of a prison camp, they had landed between 2 battalions with heavy weapons in prepared defensive positions. Crimson Tide does not end with the helicopters evacuating the survivors from the clearing. Within days, the focus shifts from the battlefield to formal debriefings in Saigon. Colonel Adderholt, the Air Force officer directing the JPRC, tells Jax he did what he could under the circumstances. The discussion quickly turns to intelligence handling, air support decisions, and the 6-week delay that preceded the mission. Adderholt and Colonel John Singh Laub, the senior Army officer overseeing MACV-SOG operations, brief General William Westmoreland. Westmoreland acknowledges the losses, but treats them as part of the cost of war. Soon after, Adderholt is ordered to report to General William Mo Maya at 7th Air Force. The focus of that meeting is close air support, specifically the F-100 strikes that fell short and hit friendly positions. Mo Maya questions how the strikes were executed. Adderholt responds that 7th Air Force had denied the request for A-1 Sky Raiders before the mission launched. In his view, the chain of failure began earlier. Reconnaissance errors, delayed approvals, aircraft allocation decisions, and compressed support windows under low cloud. The operation exposes friction between Army Special Operations planners and Air Force Command over aircraft selection and control of close air support. Several of the helicopters used in the mission belong to the South Vietnamese Army, and losses of those aircraft add strain to their relations with the U.S. In the weeks that follow, the practical impact becomes clear. Proposed rescue missions now face deeper review before approval. Intelligence must be corroborated. Air support plans must be clarified. Extraction contingencies must be defined in advance. No formal doctrine is rewritten overnight, but the tolerance for risk tightens. The mission becomes a reference point. If you were setting policy afterward, what would you have changed? Was the failure of Crimson Tide caused by outdated intelligence or by committing an assault force on uncertain information to recover, at most, 3 POWs? Let me know in the comments below. If you want more stories from history's high-risk operations, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications.